Hello, gorgeous people. Okay, let people get in. Hello, hello. It's so nice to see everyone today. Okay, we've got a lot. I've had a lot of people request the link to this call, so I have a feeling we're going to be kind of busy. So, guys, I've got, if you haven't already noticed, the great, the only Johnny Heller and Sean Pratt. Both Sean and Johnny's names come up regularly on these calls, and I've got a question to start this off. I'm not even going to do an intro because if you don't know who Sean Pratt or Johnny Heller are, then really. But I have a question for you guys. I might have asked you before. You can answer whoever wants to go first. Can you tell me about the first book you ever got booked for and how it felt? And where you were and what you were doing. Like we were talking on the last call about our first book we were ever booked for and how exciting it was. And you guys were booked like back in the Stone Ages. So could you tell us about the first book? I've got Johnny on the screen. So Johnny, go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, because you're there. You're on the screen.
Okay, all right. So I cannot recall the year, but I think it was 91. And it was at the late great Richard Ferrone had brought me to Recorded Books to work with him. At that time, they needed an adult who was childish. It's the easiest way to say it. Kind of sophomore. So I started doing children's books where I began. And the very first book I did was it's just wretched. I shouldn't say it. Lovely piece. It was, I think it was a pop-up book. And so kids learned how to read, and it's called The Wave. And it's one of those books that really little kids have where there's a page and there's a big ass wave, like a tsunami coming out of the book, which is, I'd imagine, frightening for most children. And it says, look at the wave. I didn't say this, but it's like the next page. The wave is a big, so it was literally 13 pages with pictures, maybe, and every page was one sentence. And that was my intro to the exciting world of audiobooks. And I, of course, did I did it like a Jewish delicatessen owner. I thought the kids would appreciate that. And no, I didn't. I just did it. I said, the wave comes from the sea. Whatever it was some, dippy. It was like an explainer video for kids and waves.
But 13 pages is good, so that's not intimidating or anything for like your start. How did it feel? I mean, did it feel like a big deal, even though it was a small book?
No,
because you were already a working actor, weren't you?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of commercial and stand-up comedy and stuff, and it was it was another gig. I was tending bar, I was still working hard in the bar industry so I could eventually become a famous actor that no one's heard of. So so it was just, when I started in audiobooks, it was just another gig. It was just something else you did, like being an extra in a commercial or anything else. Something you did to pay the bills.
What was the first book that wasn't just another gig? The first book that you kind of thought, wow.
As I got into more storybook, A Day No Pigs Would Die was a big thing.
Wait, what?
Flute. A Day No Pigs Would Die. It's a favorite. It's a children's book. It's about a kid. When I started in audiobooks, and I'll give it a shot, I don't want to talk too long, but all the books I did were coming of age books. And in those days, you couldn't come of age unless you're a child, and you couldn't become a mature kid or an adult unless your mom, your dad, your brother, or your pet died. That's how it worked. Yeah, there's no way to get there otherwise. And I was thinking, here I am, at my age at the time, and none of that had happened to me, so I certainly wasn't of age. But in A Day No Pigs Would Die, it's a lie, because a pig does die. It's like they killed Babe. It's a sad book, and it's like Old Yeller,
Oh, yeah.
Book. And Kokopelli Sloop by William Hobbs, and a few of the books that were I started doing longer YA books, and I got into adult stuff. But I think once I started doing books that resonated emotionally with me, I
Yeah.
began to appreciate the art.
Harry wants to know if it was by Robert Newton Peck.
It is and was, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Harry, you're good.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, it's a wonderful book, but it's just, it's like, why? Why is this got to? It's like, like, why? Half the books you read in your kid, like, why did the kid have? No one has to die for this kid. Just get
I was
mature on
so
your own,
pissed
pal.
off when I had to read Old Yeller in school. I just thought that was just horrendous that they forced us to do that.
My
But then
whole Yeller story.
I
When
walked
I was
out
a
of
kid,
Bambi, so
I was sitting on the front porch. I read way above my grades. I like to read, and I'm reading Old Yeller, and I'm sitting. I got the book. I'm on the porch, summer day. Got I think a little root beer, and dog suds root beer, and I'm reading Old Yeller. I'm reading it, and I'm into it. My big brother comes out, and goes, "Hey, what are you reading?" I said, "Old Yeller." He goes, "Oh, they killed the dog yet?"
oh no. Yeah, yeah.
Big
I
brother
mean,
sucked. All right, Sean's turn.
okay. Sean Pratt, the first book you ever did, and then If Like Johnny, because I know you guys started a long time ago. If Like Johnny, then the first book that ever really meant a lot to you.
So, like Johnny, my first book was just going to be one more thing I did.
Yeah.
I had gotten to Washington, D.C., started my life over, and I lined up like 6 months of acting work at the Shakespeare Theater. But when I got there, they decided to go in another direction with the casting, and I didn't have any work. But I remembered a conversation I'd had with an actor down there back in '94.
Wait, I want to
David
stop
Hilder was
you.
his name. He's a playwright.
Wait, I want to stop you because I have a question about that and I want to forget to ask you. When that happened to you, did you feel like it was a moratorium on you and your talent? Or it might be a male female thing, like the way we think, or did you feel like it's one of those things that happens, I'll move on? Or did it kind of shatter your
Oh,
self?
no, it was no, I mean I've been see that was 1996, so I'm 30.
Yeah.
I'd already been working in the theater for 20 years.
Okay, so you
And so I'd had plenty of opportunities to have myself shattered. So, I mean, this one was hard because I'd really banked on the money
planned.
to allow me to
Yeah.
transition into that marketplace. But it was the best in the end. I remember years later, I went to Michael Kahn, who ran the Shakespeare Theater, and I said, the best thing you ever did for me was not hire me that season, because I called up David Hilder, the actor I'd met 2 years previously, and who had talked about, he narrated books. That's how we chatted. And he had, at the time in '94, he said, well, if you ever were to move down here and we're looking for some extra work, I can recommend you to some people. And so I called him up, and he gave me the number to this guy named Grover Gardner. And so Grover was the person that got me into audiobooks. But my very first book was Cabbages and Kings by O. Henry. It's a series of short stories, and they're just wonderful. And of course, at the time, I was like, well, God, they're all going to be Hemingway. This is going to be fantastic. Little did I know what was going to come around over the next years. But like Johnny said, it was just going to be one more thing I did. I was going to do film, theater, audiobooks, modeling, whatever. But then suddenly I remember, and I was saying this to Anna just the other day, I still remember that first check for that book. It was like, back then it was like $1,500. And I was like, oh my God, suddenly it all just became very clear where I needed to be pushing my efforts as a performer. I'd never made that kind of money on a project in my life. So that was the first book. And then the book you said that mattered to me.
Yeah.
About a year later, I'm guessing. It wasn't too soon after that, actually, but it may have been like 6 to 9 months later. Blackstone Audio, who had sent me Cabbages and Kings, by the way, but Blackstone Audio sent me Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. And I'd read that book as a teenager and as a college student.
Wow.
And I really loved science fiction. And suddenly I was like, I thought it was a joke almost at first. I thought, they're not going to give that to me, are they? I mean, I'm just starting. And I remember calling Grover up, and he said, if they sent you the book, they thought it through, trust it. I'm like, okay. That book changed everything. I was like, wow, I'm really doing something important, if you can put that word on it. I'm doing something that's going to matter. And they still, to this day, that recording is still there. They've never sold off the rights. It's a constant seller for them. I still get fan email from people who've heard it. They send me like, I just listened to this one. I'm going to listen to all the, because I did a bunch of other Heinlein books after that.
Yeah.
For Blackstone. And they said, thank you so much. That was a great performance. And it's that thing about, it's like when you work in movies, what you do on the camera will resonate forever as long as people see it. In this case, hear it. I still get emails for books I did years and years ago. But that one was the first one that was like, wow, this is something a little more, the potential and the effect is much bigger than I thought.
Sean, would you say that your experience with that was the reason you gave up your promising career in snuff films?
There we go. Now I have
Snuff
to
films
mark it not for kids.
Yes. The whole snuff scene was killing me, Johnny.
It's hard to get the recurring roles in that kind of.
Did you choose nonfiction? Did the market choose you for nonfiction? And then if Sean could answer that, and then if Johnny could say the same thing about the types of genres you do, I'd be interested to hear if you formed your career in the direction it went, or if it happened and you liked it, because nonfiction isn't easy. We all know that, and you're like the king of it.
It's a little of both. So I got into nonfiction. So I'd been narrating for a couple of years, but I was only doing maybe one book a month, maybe, because I was still doing theater. So 96, 97, going into 98, I was about to get married. We were planning on buying a house and having a child who's now about to turn 23. And I had seen the financial potential, and that if I was going to also become a parent, I needed to have more time available to be a parent and not be at the theater every night. And so I was transitioning out of theater. I was doing film and TV in Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, and Richmond. And that's episodic. So I wanted more work. So I went back to Blackstone and Books on Tape, and I said, look, I need more work. I will narrate anything that nobody else wants. I don't care what it is. Just send it to me. And they took me up on it. The industry obviously was a very different world back then. It's hard to relate that now, but I literally could pick up the phone and call the casting director and say, I've got 2 weeks off in June. You have anything? But it was a different time then. But
yeah.
So I went to Blackstone and Books on Tape, and I said, I need more work. So they said, okay, well, are you okay with nonfiction? I said, sure, send it to me. And it's when I rediscovered how much I enjoyed nonfiction generally as a reader. I've always preferred nonfiction just to read as opposed to fiction. Because for me, working in the theater was fiction, doing 7 shows a week as a kid or whatever. That's the play stuff. And so nonfiction I found interesting, but I rediscovered it. And then I discovered how freaking hard it is to make it entertaining. Yeah. And that it jazzed me because one of the reasons I liked doing classical theater for so many years was that it's hard. It's hard to make an ancient text relatable and entertaining to an audience. And nonfiction has that same challenge.
Yeah.
But so to answer your question, it was both. In other words, I like nonfiction anyway. I was offered nonfiction. And I said, oh, I like doing it. And there's a lot of it out there because I remember Grover and Sigrid, who was the casting director then. They were saying they had such a hard time getting narrators to commit to doing nonfiction for them. It was like pulling teeth. I said, send it to me. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because it was difficult. I enjoyed it for the topic. I enjoyed it for what I learned. So
I have to admit, I enjoy I like the challenge. It's a challenge, isn't it? And every single one I've done, I've learned something from. But do you know what? It's a whole different thing than doing a thriller, isn't it? It's a different experience altogether, isn't it? I mean, you're still acting, but it's completely different.
Well, I think of it like the way I tell my students, the way I think of it, it's like I get to play this version of a Hamlet, right? It's a one-man show. It's my Hamlet, and no one else ever gets to play that part but me. If I didn't need a big enough ego stroke, the fact that I can, and when you have a really good piece, it doesn't necessarily have to be a memoir either. It could be a history of something, an examination of a topic. And when you turn it into the script and it becomes the performance, and if it's well written and you really connect with it, to me, that's like a 10-hour one-man show. And, you know, all eyes are up here. I don't have to
Yeah.
share the limelight with anybody. And that's hard. I mean, it's, don't get me wrong. I like doing fiction, like thrillers and Westerns and whatever. But, you know, you're the idea there to me is that I disappear into the story,
Yeah.
that I'm just the characters' voices, that you should be entertained by the story, not, oh, how clever is Sean? But when I do nonfiction, I even though I still disappear into it, to me, it's like I get to be myself through the author's words for the entire book. And that I really like that. You know, the challenge is hard, but the payoff to me can be huge.
I can see that. Now it makes me, I think I prefer not to be myself. I think of course, so now it brings us to Johnny and how you steered and directed your career and ended up with the kind of books that you ended up with. Johnny Heller, you're on.
There's when I started, I worked at Recorded Books, which is now a giant, you know, IBM thing. It's huge. Yeah. When I started, it was a kind of a family place. Barbara Rosenblatt, Simon Preble, and George Goodall, they were all there, and they all helped me a great deal. Richard Ferrone, they all helped me a lot. And I wasn't aware of any other company even doing it for the first 5. I didn't know there was any other companies until I went to my first Audiowords. And I said, hey, there's a lot of people there. So when I started, once they got to know me and they realized what I liked, and they did every kind of genre there was. So they realized I was a history guy. So I read presidential and war history. I'm really good at that. I like that stuff. So I started doing nonfiction in that. And then they started giving me anything that was potentially humorous, they'd give me. Westerns, they would give me. I did almost every genre there was, so that my brand is kind of everything. I'm like the 1940s to 70s character actor who plays anything. You can't brand yourself as that, but that's how I'm perceived. So today, as a result of all of that, Macmillan will call with a fiction, and then Penguin Random House will call with a nonfiction. It's just,
how did you do that? That's because you've managed to cross over all the genres and make them think of you for those genres.
I'm not sure how I did it, and I'm not sure that it was a plan. I just did they gave me books that I enjoyed, and as Sean had said, I enjoyed doing the work. I enjoyed playing everybody.
Okay.
And I think in the nonfiction world, I'm able to put myself in the seat of the author who's an authority on the subject, but not a douchey authority, but a friendly one, you know, a professor you want to take a class from, that kind of guy. And in the character books, playing the characters, they're real characters to me. Everything I see is a film unspooling. And so I think that ability or that take on the craft makes me accessible for a lot of different genres. And I also think that because I don't know another way to say this without sounding just awful, but I can't, because I was successful in all of them, they let me do more of them. You know, I didn't run up against there's no genre that I failed at, you know. The only genre I don't do is erotica.
I think it's your delivery, I think, would be funny.
It's proved amusing in many a quiet night with a loved one. I don't. I'm the last guy you want to have a really dirty conversation with. Although I know a lot of dirty jokes.
But you notice that the thing is, you and Sean both said, so the key was you went to the work that you enjoyed, and maybe the enjoyment made good work.
The real important point is not only the work you enjoy, because, you know, every book you get is not, I've done over 1,000. Sean's done over 1,000. I promise you, we didn't like all 1,000 of them. I promise you. But you have to respect the listener.
Yeah.
And you have to play to, this is important to them. And you have to make it important to you. That's the craft of acting. You know?
Yeah.
And I just think that when you talk about I don't think the way Sean and I started in the business or got to where we are now in the business is possible now. It doesn't mean you can't reach a given level or given place in the business. It just means the path is different now. It's like if you're a general practitioner as a doctor, that's a weird thing. Everybody picks a specialty. Later, it's like picking your college major. How many times did you change it? You know, as an audiobook actor, you start branding yourself and realize, well, shit, I can't. That's not right at all. That's not who I am after all. I'm this guy. Then you got to change your brand, which changes everything. So I don't think Sean and I were involved, nor was it required to be involved in branding yourself. You became known as a good actor. And you got hired because you're a good actor and could play anything. And that's what this job requires. Now you brand yourself to make it easier to be cast in whatever it is. If you like sci-fi, brand yourself as a sci-fi guy. But what if you also like, you like erotica, you like thriller, you like history, you like mystery, if you brand yourself as everything, then the publishers don't know what to do. As Sean and I always say, everything, your demos, your website, everything you do has got to answer questions for the publisher, not give new ones. So the way Sean and I came into the business and how we maintain and how we are now is peculiar and to us because of when we came and our longevity.
But I have a theory. I'm going to run it by you guys. I get kind of like kicked out of the room every time I bring it up because people like don't seem to understand how well it's so brilliant. I think it's a stroke of genius, but nobody really agrees with me. But I think you two will, of everyone. I think that there are 3 different types of narrators in the business. And I think you guys have managed, because of the fact that you coach so many new people, that you have managed to bridge a lot of the ones. You've taken on the different levels. So I think that and I might be completely wrong. Happy to have you guys set me straight. And I'm not saying any one of these groups is better or worse than the other, because I did Cup of Joe. I was the first one saying, if you're a newbie and you love it and you want to keep doing it, you hang on, I respect you, right? So I'm not saying a new person's less or a veteran's more, but the veterans went into the studio, built relationships with publishers, and most of the time they got their jobs with the publishers contacting them, the back and forth. And a lot of the time they didn't have to audition, but they proved themselves in their work. And if they kept doing good work and they were a known quantity and they were reliable, and they paid attention, so they got the training. They were usually actors. They worked on the craft, was everything. And a lot of them didn't work from home. Then there were the ones that started around when I started, around 2015, 2016. We only ever knew, I started in a studio doing Royal National Institute of the Blind, but that was different. When I really started working and getting my own books, home studio. And we went to you guys, the veterans, because that was the only way we knew. Of course, you have to immediately get a good coach. And then you go to the next coach for this and the next, but you get a good coach. First one I went to, Sean Pratt, couldn't have done better, made a better choice, fabulous. Sean helps you with a little bit of marketing, but it's a tough learn. And your coaches didn't start off in studios. So we're learning from the veterans, but the job we're starting is a little different. We're having to work in the studio, learn the tech, like home studio kind of. And we learned from you guys, you got to have a lot of books before you start approaching publishers. You want to be taken seriously because you guys were used to working on your craft. You got to show your chops before going to publishers. So we waited. Somehow the number 100 books. Don't go until you've got 100 books. Which I don't know I can't remember if anyone actually said that, but we all got it in our head, wait for 100 books. So we did that for a few years. And then we all got to about 100 books and COVID started to hit. And all the actors that were told, come in, make a little money on the side, set up your studio, and we'll show you. It's all networking, marketing, reach out to the publishers, don't go to events. That's silly. It's a waste of money. You don't really need a lot of coaching. You're an actor. Just sell yourself and you'll learn, on the job. And so we said, oh no, sorry, honey, you have to have 100 bucks. And they all started booking the work. And all the publishers, we heard them say, oh, we love new voices. We're like, hold on. We were new voices, but wait. So now, and people can say what they want. I'm not thinking AI is the big monster. I think the market is inundated and flooded. It's a brilliant job, and a lot of people want it, and there's a lot of competition now. And some of the veterans, I'm not counting Johnny and Sean in because you guys aren't like this, but some of the veterans have never had to do the branding social media stuff. And they're like, hold on a minute, why are they asking me for auditions? Why am I not getting as many books? What's going on? The 100-book people are like, we've worked harder than everyone else in the world. Nobody's ever paid attention to us. And now people are coming in and then the new people are like, I don't envy them because they came in with the flood of people, right? I'm taking over Johnny and Sean's whole call. I promise I'm finished. They came in with a flood of people, but they might have gotten 1 or 2 books with easy connections with publishers, but they've got to build a whole career now. So is it not a fact that all 3 levels have to learn from each other and pick things up from each other and stop being like afraid of like dry spells and quiet spells? Or am I totally wrong about the tiers? That was just one question. Did it take a long time?
Johnny,
I'll
no.
edit some of that out.
Just leave it go. It's all right.
But do you understand what I'm saying? Am I wrong about that? That they're different.
Sean, you want to go first and I'll jump?
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, because the industry itself evolves.
Yeah.
Okay. And it wants different things at different times. When we started, no one wanted to do this but actors, and you're right. Generally, it was New York, Chicago, LA, whatever. Although I, being in DC, was an anomaly. There was a huge amount of narrators there because of Library of Congress and the Books for the Blind.
Right.
And it's the second largest theater market in the country. But most of us, well, I did. I've only, of the 1,000 books I've done, maybe 5 were in the studio. I started
really?
by myself, working at Grover's. But the industry, I mean, we were an anomaly because I was in Washington, D.C. Had I been in Kansas City or Dallas, it never would have happened.
Okay.
But the industry back then was small. It was like on the launch pad. It felt that way, at least. Like it was like this rocket getting ready to just take off.
Right.
And you could see the year-over-year book sales, the volume of material got bigger, and so like for Johnny and I, we got swept into that explosion, and Johnny, being in New York, had access to the studios to go to, right? But we both had tons of work, and then this went on for quite some time. This is my and now more and more people get into it. When it all went digital, the cost of getting into it got cheaper.
Yeah.
And people could have home studios. And because the volume of work expanded, a lot of startup companies were coming along who couldn't afford studio space. So having a booth at home, that was their business model. I worked for a lot of people like that. With the latest, the COVID crowd,
Yeah.
I think, as you tried to say them.
And
you had a lot of
they're my favorite
actors.
people in the whole world, for the record. I'm not putting anyone down, because if you love narrating and you're good at it.
You can, right, but I can give you off stories about each one of those groups. I knew people who, from the beginning, who were pissed off that now they would have to record from home because a lot of the big studios were shutting down their, this is back in the day, 15 years ago or whatever. They were, complaining like, well, but now I have to engineer all this for the same amount of money. And they were all got their knickers in a twist. And then the middle people with 100 books, they're champing at the bit to go. But you see, by the time they get into it, it's just like New York. It's like Broadway. Everybody wants to be on Broadway.
Yeah.
And so the producers can set, like, unless you can juggle with your left hand and type with your right while singing, I love America, whatever, we're not going to take you. They can set that bar because there's so many people who want it. So they keep up, first it was 20 books, 30 books, 50 books, 60 books. And then you guys said 100, which is crazy. Anyway. And so they have their hurdles to get over. And with the COVID people, I found you were looking at, like, a lot of theater, mainly film actors, it seemed. They were looking to turn a quick buck when things were, but they didn't realize it takes time to build these relationships in the long haul. And they learned that it's a lot more work than they thought. And yes, because some of those film and theater actors were well known, they had a certain level of exposure or celebrity, they were booking work. And I don't want to take anything away from their talent. It's hard being a film and theater, film and TV actor.
And
It's
I don't
hard
mind them,
making a living in that
ironically, because the
environment.
thing is they're doing other things, so they're never going to take like our full-time job because they're busy. So they can have their
Yeah,
they can have their Audi every time they work.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, it's that. It's like I consider myself sort of like, it's like a journeyman carpenter or a journeyman actor.
Yeah.
I've always thought of myself as a journeyman narrator. It just so happens I really like nonfiction, so that's become my thing. But I'm like, look, as long as I have another book ahead of me,
Yeah.
I'm happy. And now with my students, I'm even happier because I get to work with people every day. But even when I was just narrating, I'm like, it could be an A-list title, a B-list, or sometimes even a C-list. But I was working every day, and I got to hone my craft. I really enjoyed what I was doing, and it helped create the lifestyle that I wanted to live.
Yeah.
Raising a family.
It's what Johnny says about getting better, that like, you don't worry about what's going on with the industry, just make yourself better. Like, am I misrepresenting you?
No, that's exactly what I say. And in addressing what you had to say, my most recent blog is on, FOMO and on imposter syndrome and feelings like that. And I'm like, that's all real. But some of what I heard you say, first off, if there are actors in the audiobook world who are insulted or offended by the idea that they have to audition, wonderful. Let's write them out immediately. That's less competition.
Yep.
I
totally
agree. I get turned down regularly. I don't get every book. Now, when I started, I rarely auditioned. I just got a book after book after book. When the home studio, I had to be competitive. When home studios came out, I had to have a home studio. I needed to work because they didn't want to spend the publisher didn't want to spend the money to send you to a studio.
Well, that's why I think you and Sean don't come into any of those, because you also took on the social media. You've like moved and evolved with each of the groups.
But I think you need to move and evolve every time there's a change in the craft you live in. It doesn't change who you are, but you have to recognize what's going on. Part of the idea is this 100-book thing, or the insulting idea that working for ACX is somehow not professional, or that you're in the minor leagues.
People
That's
still think that.
Bullshit.
Yeah, people still apologize for not having as many publishers.
Board, so I'm not changing anything. It's not fair. It's wrong. Here's what you can and should control is what you're bringing to the craft, where you are. The biggest threat to our industry is not AI. It's shitty acting. Mm-hmm. If listeners get used to bad narration, they won't recognize how shitty AI is. It'll be the norm.
Yeah.
So all these new people who are, not all of them, but new people, untrained, who came in because someone made the horrible mistake of telling them they had a lovely voice, and they got involved, or people who think, I can't audition, even though they're wonderful actors, I can't audition because I've only done 30 books and I think I need 50. You know what? Your first job on a Broadway stage, regardless, it could be your first acting job, you're on a Broadway stage and you're an actor. Your first audiobook job is you're working. There's no minor leagues. You're playing in the bigs immediately, and you've got to stop thinking otherwise. It just hurts your craft. What you can do is be good at what you do and keep moving forward. And the people who say they're booked till next summer, first, fine. That means you're not going to get called for other opportunities. And two, they're lying anyway.
I love, because there are no amateurs, are there, in narrating? Because when and Sean, another thing Sean taught me in the beginning, you're being paid, you'd better be good.
As soon as you make $1, you're a professional. Sean started as a fluffer. And from his first film, he was a professional fluffer.
So I'm going to have to edit this.
No, you don't. You leave it in. They want to know who we are. This is who we are. There's no editing.
No.
Edit.
What he doesn't want to, what Johnny wants to tell you, what Johnny doesn't want to say was, I was a fluffer for Johnny, and so it was a small job, but I took it anyway.
We haven't even gotten to the quirky question.
I have to say something from the bottom of my heart. I love Sean Pratt. I just think he's a wonder. I just love this guy. I'm alone in that, I know, but still, it's nice to share.
But you guys are like the dynamic duo. Okay, I'm going to hit you with a quirky question. Then I've got a quick serious one, and then I want to talk adventure brewing. Quirky question from Barbara for both of you. So intern, I've got Johnny first, since you're here. If you were placed in the witness protection program, what occupation would you choose?
Oh.
Barbara, you never let us down.
Wow, that's tough. I guess something. I guess I'd like to. Good Lord, a bartender or a park ranger, or a mixture of those two would be wonderful. Yeah,
Bartender,
run the
park
bar at
ranger.
Yosemite. Yeah,
I could see that. I could
I
see
can
that.
See that. Yeah.
Run in from being the park ranger and run the bar.
That's right. Yeah. The guy gets the cocaine for the cocaine bear. That's my job.
Harry says a Central Park ranger.
Yes. Harry likes. Yes, I would love that. Except I'm not good at weeding and crap like that. I'm really good at looking at the results of all that. Yeah.
I think a park ranger has to like do that weeding.
No, you wear a hat and take people on tours and stuff. That's it.
I don't know. I've only done a suspense, and
Yeah.
he just had to shoot people a lot. So
maybe if I could be in the witness protection program, I get a job as an assassin.
oh,
there you go. They probably could get me in.
or a park ranger assassin bartender.
We're writing a cozy mystery.
I guarantee next week one will come out. Something. Sean Pratt, Witness Protection Program.
Oh, I go back to being a wood carver. I apprenticed for a while in Santa Fe with a wood carver and a master carpenter. He did build cabinets and stuff, but he was also a wood carver. And so on Saturdays and Sundays when I wasn't doing a show or I had a morning off, I'd go out to his place. He lived in a little town called Madrid, New Mexico, which was an old coal mining town that was taken over by hippies in the 60s. And he lived just outside of town. Jim was his name. And he carved wood. So like, those curvy pillars that would go on a 4-poster bed, or, sunsets or rings, sunshine, on the middle of cabinet doors and things.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd go over there like on a Sunday morning. So I go on a Sunday morning, and he'd brew a really strong pot of coffee, and he grew his own weed. And so we'd smoke a joint and have a cup of coffee, and then we'd carve for the next 5 hours. And it was one of the most amazing experiences I ever had in my life. And so if I was in the witness protection program, I would go back and be a wood carver.
A stoned wood carver. And you might have to be a Banksy of wood carvers, because they would look in your history and they'd see this wood carver, so they'd be looking for you. So you'd have to be like totally undercover.
There we go.
The anonymous stoned wood carver.
There we go.
Okay. I have a quick question to bring us way down before we talk about adventure brewing. We asked this question in our last call with Barbara, Kim, and Craig, and it was really, really interesting. And I think it helped a lot of people. It helped me because it made us realize that we literally all have that moment. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing it, feel free to just make up a bunch of rubbish. You don't have to be authentic if you don't. But the hardest part, you're low in the career, was there ever a moment when you kind of like thought, how can I do this? Or when you didn't get a book that you really thought you were going to get and it didn't come through? Or what would you say was like the low moment, career-wise, not personal life-wise? Because what I like about that question is everyone has had a low moment and we're all here now. And I think a lot of people right now are going through dry spells, and it might help to know that even Sean Pratt and Johnny Heller had low moments at some point. And if that's too invasive and personal, feel free to make something up.
Sean, what's your low moment besides this one?
So my low moment wasn't necessarily a lack of work, because I was always hustling, always trying, always doing. And what happened was I hit a point where right after the Great Recession, and so it was like 2008, 2009, all my on-camera work dried up with SAG. And this was before AFTRA had union contracts. And so we lost our family health insurance, and we had a number of health issues happen in a family.
Oh, God.
And we were really strapped financially. And so I was really grateful at that time I worked for Gildan Media. And Gilles, the man who owns it, was sending me tons and tons of work. And I didn't care what it was. But I got to a point where I was narrating 7 days a week without stop until I got sick at some point. Then I have a few days off and go back, to the point that I would wake up on a day and I couldn't tell you what day of the week it was, but I knew exactly what my schedule was going to be.
Yeah.
I had to record a certain number of hours in the morning, do a couple things in the afternoon, and come back in the afternoon. And I did that for months and months and months. And what the low point wasn't that we were making money for the family, but the low point was I was starting to feel burned out. And I didn't have a plan B after this. This was it. And the notion that I could be, like I got burned out of theater because I was a repertory theater actor for a long time, where you're rehearsing one show in the day and performing at night, and you do that for months on end. I thought, if I get burned out of this, I don't know what else I'm going to do that can make this kind of money with what my skill set was.
Yeah.
And it scared me to death. And it was a hard valley to get out of. But eventually I found some ways to cope with it that allowed me to push on through. So it wasn't a lack of work. It was that I had so much, and I felt so much pressure, to keep working no matter what. And that wasn't a good thing.
Do you think that helped create your work ethic now? Got like a crazy work ethic, like such and such hours break, coaching such and such hours. Do you think that came from that time?
Yeah, I mean, I was already wired to do that from just being at the theater. You have to be here at a certain time for rehearsal and fight call and whatever. So from the time I was a kid, I had that sort of drilled into me. But yeah, definitely that work ethic. But I mean, the truth is I've learned to slow down a bit, and also I just had to.
Yeah.
That was what got me out of that slump. Is I asked for a raise, and I got it. And suddenly I didn't have to work as hard. And suddenly I could take Sundays off for the first time in months and months and months. And now here I am, 57, after doing this for 24, 25 years, whatever it is. And I feel much more comfortable taking time off, knowing that I'll do better. Like right now, I'm in the middle of writing my next book. And so I've taken 3 weeks where I haven't recorded anything. I've just been getting up in the morning and writing for 3 hours. That would be my studio time, because in the afternoons I teach. And so I'm just writing, but it's creative. It's fun. I'm having a great time. I can't imagine myself doing that even a few years ago. I'd be so driven that, my God, I got to keep working. But I've slowly learned to trust that everything's going to be fine. The work comes. It always has. And I have to trust that I'm doing something creative right now that's going to pay off down the line. But yeah, no, the work ethic is there. My kids used to joke. They always knew where Dad was. All they had to do was look at the clock, because my schedule never varied as to what I was doing and when I was doing it. So yeah.
I think that's something.
Go ahead, you, Johnny.
Yeah. Johnny, hello.
Well, we don't have tons of time, so I won't use it to make fun of my friend Jeff, who subscribes down there. I just want to point out that I'm happy he's here. He's a good man. I'll say this. I'm generally kind of, I'm generally as happy as I seem to be. I'm pretty lighthearted most of the time, but I will say, like any actor, I was doing a series, and the series went to a different publisher, and they didn't keep me on in the series. and I audition like everyone else. I get them, I don't get them. I'll be terribly, terribly frank and honest. Every audition for a book that I actually want, that I don't get, hurts. I have the actor's ego. I have the same feeling. It hurts.
Yeah.
There are at least 3 big projects that I wanted. And I know, when I look back, I know I did the best job I could do. And you can't do better than your best. And I didn't get the gigs in these 3 things. I mean, over the course of years, it's not the worst thing in my life. I'm still working, but it hurt.
Yeah.
And because of my experience and who I am, I'm not able to write and say, is there something I could have done differently? What was it that didn't? And because it's never, you can't pinpoint, hey, Sean, I can't hire you because of your lisp or something else doesn't have, you know what I mean? You can't, and they don't have time to answer. Frequently, it's just like auditioning for a commercial or theater or something. Somebody else sounds like what they want. If an author writes a book in the voice, best friend from second, not know that, even if you did know that, it wouldn't help what you do.
And author
You know
approval is a big thing now. Almost all the books we audition for, the author listens to.
And you may be wonderful, and frequently are. And I had lunch with the lovely Brian Barney from Blackstone today. We talked about a project that he had offered, I auditioned for, I don't know, a few years ago. We talked about it. He goes, I got to be honest with you. And I'm not going to say what it is or who got it because it's not fair. But he said, you were perfect. It was definitely for you. They went on, and so a lot of times when you don't get the gig you want, it isn't because you did something wrong.
Yeah.
It's because somebody had a different voice in their head. It's like when I'll do it real quick. My very first commercial I ever got for Budweiser. The hell was it? It's Campbell's Soup.
Campbell's Soup.
Here's what I did.
I know this story.
That was my job.
Campbell's
I've done
Soup.
it a million times. That's what you did. How do you mess that up? Somebody did better than me or worse than me? Why do you fuck that up? So it's not just about what you do. It's sometimes the perception of whoever has to make the decision. Or sometimes they listen to, they get 50 submissions and they're sick to death of it by the 7th. So the 8th guy gets the gig. So yeah, it hurts. The only time I've been hurt in this industry, besides personal, real or imagined slights to my ego or person or honor or whatever, and that you just have to deal with. But in terms of getting or not getting jobs, that always hurts the actor. How could it not?
It does. And we should be used to, I had an actual real life commercial that I got, but they were sending me out of the room and they called me back and they said, we want you. And they let the other girl go. They said, she's too pretty. They wanted someone like middle age. So they got me instead. So I got the job on the basis that the other girl was too pretty.
Sean gets that a lot. Far too pretty for nonfiction. Yeah, that's
you know what I mean? I don't know. I think I'd rather be the one fired for prettiness than get the job for not prettiness.
It's just important. Everybody knows that what happens to everybody in who's going to hear this call. It happens to us too. When
everyone
believe what you want to believe. It's all the same. Just bigger and more. That's all.
And that makes it weirdly just okay, just fine.
Everybody, I get said no to more than I get said yes to.
Yeah.
A baseball player gets 3 hits out of 10 and he's doing great.
And we get an audition. And I mean, the thing about this job is no other job, like any email we get, that little notification comes up, could be like amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have something, Sean?
No, I was just going to say, the whole thing about auditioning too, there have been books I've wanted, but when I was a theater actor in New York, I was auditioning for stuff all the time. And I had a really good coach with my theater group, and she drilled into us. It's like, look, you have the audition in front of you. You prepare as much as you possibly can. You bring in bring your A game in, and you do the audition, and you never apologize. You just do the best you can. You say, thank you very much. And she said, when you hear the door shut behind you, you forget about that audition. Because you're already on to the next audition. And that got beaten into me in New York. So for me, I mean, there's books I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool to do. But by the time I hear that I didn't get it, I'm 4 other book auditions down here.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, don't hang on to it. You did your best job, walk away, just keep going forward. Because
talk about our
what
workshop.
you're doing by staying in the past of so you keep moving forward. Okay, let's talk about the workshop.
I know, because I can see Johnny. Johnny's like, don't forget Adventure Brewery. Brewing. I cannot pronounce that word, and I hope I don't ever get a book with it.
Beer joint.
So tell me how the idea came up.
And I was at VO Atlanta with the lovely Sean Pratt. Stephanie Johnson, who lives in the west in Fredericksburg, Virginia area, I think she's a publicity person. There's 2 adventure breweries, one in Fredericksburg and one in a town about, I don't know, 5 or a million miles away. I have no idea where Virginia is. So she said, Johnny, you should do a workshop in the brewery in Fredericksburg. And Fredericksburg is a very cool town. A lot of Civil War history, it's very fascinating. Good restaurants. And Bill and Joya Lord live right nearby. They're dear friends. So I said, this is perfect. And also you can draw from DC and Baltimore and Richmond and, so people in the area. So we're going to do a weekend workshop on fiction and nonfiction. Sean, me, and the lovely Joanna Perrin will all 3 work with people. It's going to be June 3rd and 4th at the Adventure Brewery in right downtown Fredericksburg, at the brewery itself. So we can, I don't know if we can.
Will you be drinking during
I don't know
the
if we're going to be
workshop?
drinking while it happens or when it's over. I guess it depends how well things are going. I'll leave that. I'll leave that up to who's ever there. But I think there's definitely going to be the brew pubs there. We'll provide lunch, so it's pretty much like a 10 to 4:30, 10 to 5 kind of day. So Saturday's fiction, Sunday's nonfiction, and we'll all 3 work with everybody. It's good. We always, Sean, Joanne, and I do, and sometimes Anna Clemeno do these workshops frequently, travel around. It's a great time. It's a lot of fun. Everybody, I promise, that's not a drink-a-thon. It's fun, and you learn things, and you grow. And for us, the coaches, Joanna, Sean, and I, it doesn't matter what level you come in at. We'll meet you at your level and work with you. Because the whole idea is to up your game. And if you're a SAG-AFTRA member, we can get a discount for you on the price. If it's a financial issue for anyone, let me know, and we'll work something out that makes it easy for you to afford, because we want you to come. It is, as I said, the 3rd and 4th in Fredericksburg, Virginia. It's $300 for a day, $550 for the weekend, but SAG-AFTRA gets a discount. And it's on my website, johnnyheller.com, under workshops, the tab there. And I think we were at Jeff Grout's place in Austin. When was that, Sean? When was Austin? Barb, when was that?
Last summer.
And Jeff, what a great time that was. It was just a wonderful one, even though I was in Texas. It was
even though I was in Texas, he doesn't mean offense, Jeff.
No, I mean offense. But it's Sean, Joanne, and I have such a wonderful time together. We really enjoy what we do, and I promise you, we know what we're talking about. And there's a chance that we work with you on your reads. No one has ever gone to these things and not thought it was a swell experience. So I'm delighted that we have a chance to. And the reason I'm sounding like a commercial is because I want you to come.
But I have a question.
Yes.
You've been doing these workshops for a very long time, you and Sean and Joanna and Anna. I know she's not able to get to this one, but how have they changed since you started? Because you've obviously perfected them. How have they changed since you've started?
That's a great question. I've learned a lot more. So what I'm able, and I listen to my students and Sean and his students, and to see what people want to talk about and listen to and hear about. So while the agenda for these weekend workshops looks similar, what we actually talk about is always dependent on what the workshop consists of, the experience level of the registrants, what they seem interested versus not interested in. In the bigger workshops, like my Splendiferous or the New England workshop in October, I always try to bring different coaches, and that one I bring publishers too. So we try and cover different things, things like the invasion of AI, diversity in casting. Some of the questions you brought up today. Like, I know that in New England, we'll be talking specifically about anxiety and FOMO and imposter syndrome. Anna Clement and the lovely Amanda Quaid will be talking about things like that. It just, those are things that are kind of new. So as things happen, as things change, you know, as we learn, like now we work by ourselves. So self-direction is a huge topic to discuss. And if I say you need to work on self-direction, people say, what is that? What does that mean? Well, let's break it down. And
So
also
it's
we're
more
doing a lot more
bespoke
things.
then. So you're saying it's kind of a more bespoke experience. And then the larger ones, they have access to more coaches and publishers and everything in different variety. But on these smaller ones, you'll have a more bespoke experience, right? You'll have people will be directly spending time with you, addressing your concerns and where you are right now.
Exactly so. Exactly. That's well put. I shouldn't have said a word.
Plus booze.
So you have it down solidly. That's exactly right.
Barbara says she's looking forward to New England. It'll be her first retreat. I want to go to one of those.
Barbara, I'll send you a note when it's ready so you can sign up right away, because I want you there. And it will actually, I'm working on I think I've finished the workshop agenda. So I'm going to type it up and get it up hopefully by over the weekend at the latest, so it's open. I'm waiting for a link to the Warren Center hotel rooms so you can actually have a room when you're there. Oh, or if you want to come to the Fredericksburg, we have a hotel deal. I think it may be over in terms of the room block, but I could probably still get it if anyone needs a hotel. So it's you guys should come. Tell everybody else to come. Everybody come.
And this video will be out early, guys. I'm hoping to get this video out by the weekend. So if anyone is curious about it, they can check it out on YouTube. And I'll put all the information in booking and the links in the about section so people can find it. You guys, as always, have been really, really generous with your time and your your stories and telling us about your past. Can you leave us with, we'll start with Johnny first because he's on screen, famous last words? If you could leave anyone with anything aside
I
from
wish
come
I'd
to
lived a little
Adventure
longer if I had
Brewing.
known. I would have gone to Portugal by now. Famous last words. I hope that that whatever your perception of me is based on my reputation, that I either live up or down to it, depending on what it is.
I like that one. That's a good one. Famous last words, Sean?
Goodbye.
I hope that, yeah, goodbye. See ya. I told you I was sick.
It's been fun.
Yeah, okay, I'll try to be
Good to have
fair.
calamari.
I hope that my work, shut up. I hope that the books you hear me narrate, that you're entertained by them and they teach you something. How about that for famous last words?
I love that.
I don't know.
You never know what book you do might not be anything to you, but it could be everything to somebody that listens.
Yeah, that's true. Those are good last words. That should be everyone's.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. You are amazing. Video will be out this weekend. Mwah. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining. You're all amazing.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Jeff. Okay,
Bye.
bye, everybody.
Lifted
Bye-bye.
drink in my honor at Adventure Brewery.
Brewery. Also, it's grocery.
Brewery.
There's no grocery.
Grocery.
Bye, guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Brewery.